Our beloved leader is gone. Can you restore peace to the land and rise as the new emperor? Lead your clan of samurai cats into battles and negotiations in Disgraced House.
Hey y'all, I'm Parker Simpson. I'm the illustrator and developer of Disgraced House. This is a suitless, trick-taking card game by designer Kenner Cooperrider, and I'm here today to show you how to play. Players compete to win standard tricks by having the highest card, and they attempt to avoid disgrace in the final trick of the round by not having the highest card. The first player to 13 points wins. This video outlines the standard Disgraced House gameplay for 2 to 4 players. Information about the other variants can be found at the end of this video. Variants include Crowded Court for 5 to 6 players, Alliances for teams of 2, and Classic Disgraced House, which has a simpler rule set for a more traditional trick-taking experience.
Let's get started setting up the game. Place the Emperor card on the left side of the play area. Shuffle the Envoy cards and place them face down to the right of the Emperor card. Shuffle the Advisor cards and place them face down to the right of the Envoy deck, leaving space below them for a discard pile. Shuffle the Ally cards and place them face down to the right of the Advisor deck, leaving space below for a discard pile. Place the 3 score track cards on side A horizontally above the decks, with score values ascending from left to right. Give each player a reference card in the color of their choice, along with the 2 matching player tokens. Players will put one of their player tokens on their reference card and the other on the 0 position of the score track. Give each player a fate token to start the game, then place the rest of the fate tokens below the Envoy deck. Let's discuss the different types of cards you'll find in the game. In Disgraced House, there are 4 different card types: Envoy cards, Advisor cards, Ally cards, and the Emperor card. Envoy cards are played into tricks and have numbers ranging from 0 to 10. Each Envoy card has 2 numbers, a black number that can be played for free, and a red number that can be played by spending a fate token. When playing an Envoy card, orient it so that the chosen number is pointing into the center of the play area. If playing an Envoy card for its red number, place a fate token next to it. Advisor cards provide players with ongoing abilities or objectives for the round. Advisor cards are played at the start of the round, before the first trick. After being played, Advisor cards stay in front of the player until the end of the round. Ally cards provide players with an instant special effect. Ally cards are played during any trick along with the player's selected Envoy card. At the end of the trick, place the Ally card face down in the Ally discard pile. If an Ally card is not used by the end of the round, it is not carried over to the next round. The Emperor card is played during any trick along with the player's selected Envoy card. The Emperor card adds or subtracts 1 from a single Envoy card it is played with. An Envoy card's value cannot go higher than 10 or lower than 0. At the end of the trick, place the Emperor card next to the Envoy deck. If the Emperor card is not used by the end of the round, it is not carried over to the next round. Now let's learn how to play. Players play into tricks in a clockwise order, beginning with the starting player. A trick is finished when all players have played once into the trick. In the first trick of the first round, the starting player is randomly determined during setup. In the first trick of all other rounds, the starting player is the player with the Emperor card. In all other tricks, the starting player is the player that won the previous trick. Let's go over what happens each round. Give a fate to all players who are 3 or more points behind an opponent. Check the score track to see which player has the most points. Their position determines the hand size for the round. Deal each player cards from the top of the Envoy deck equal to the hand size for the round. Then, deal each player one card from the top of the Advisor deck and one card from the top of the Ally deck. When these decks are depleted, shuffle their discard piles to replace the deck. In turn order, beginning with the starting player, each player must choose to either discard their Advisor card face down to gain a fate, or play it now. Then, players will repeat this process with their ally cards. In turn order, beginning with the starting player, each player must choose to either discard their ally card face down to gain a fate, or add it to their hand. Play begins with a standard trick, and continues with standard tricks until each player has one Envoy card left in their hand. We'll discuss specifically how to play into tricks in the next section. Standard tricks are won by the player who plays the highest Envoy cards last. At the end of the trick, the winning player collects all Envoy cards played, stacks them face down, and places them next to their reference card. Each standard trick scores 1 point at the end of the round. The peace treaty happens when each player has one Envoy card left in their hand. No player will win this trick. Instead, the player who plays the highest card last becomes the Disgraced House. All other players will score points equal to half of their card's value rounded up. The Disgraced House will take the Emperor card and add it to their hand for the next round. Players will add the points they earned from the tricks they won and the peace treaty, then update their scores on the score track. The game ends if at least one player has scored 13 or more points. If not, reset and play another round. Collect all Envoy cards from the round and shuffle them back into the deck. Then, collect all Advisor and Ally cards and place them face down in their respective discard piles. Do not shuffle them back into their decks. Let's look at how to play into a trick. If you are the starting player, you are leading the trick. The first step is optional. You may play an Ally card and/or the Emperor card. Then, you'll lead a 1 or 2 card trick. In a 1 card trick, you may play any Envoy card from your hand as black for free or red by spending 1 fate. In a 2 card trick, you will play 2 Envoy cards with the same number. These numbers can be red and/or black. You cannot lead a 2 card trick if you only have 2 cards left, as there must always be 1 card left in your hand for the peace treaty. If you are not leading a trick, you are considered following. The first step is optional. You may play an Ally card and/or the Emperor card. In a 1 card trick, you'll play a single Envoy card. You must either play high or low. To play high, your card must be equal to or higher than the current high play. You do not have to play high, even if you're able. To play low, you must play the lowest number card from your hand, based on the black numbers. In a 2 card trick, you'll play 2 Envoy cards. You must either play high or low. To play high, both of your cards must be equal to or higher than both of the cards in the current high play. This means that both cards must individually beat the cards in the high play, not just their sum. To play low, you must play the 2 lowest number cards from your hand, based on the black numbers. You must play either high or low. You cannot play 1 card high and 1 card low.
Here is an example round to demonstrate some of the gameplay basics of Disgraced House. You can follow along with this example in your rulebook on page 8. It is currently mid-game and the 4th round has started. David, the yellow player, currently has the most points, which means his position determines the hand size for the round. He has 10 points, making the hand size for each player 5. Kenner, the red player, is the current Disgraced House and has the Emperor card, which means he will lead the first trick of the round. Kenner, the red player, can lead any card from his hand to start the trick. He's going to use this 8. Alex, the blue player, can now either play high, which would be an 8 or higher, or he would play low, which would be the lowest black number in his hand. Alex decides to play high, playing this 8. The 8 equals the high play, so it is now the high play. Mark, the black player, can now play high, meeting or exceeding the 8, or play the lowest black number in his hand. He could technically play this black 8 to beat the high play, or even this red 10 by spending a fate. But he wants to save those cards, so instead he plays his lowest black number. David, the yellow player, now must play high or low. The high play is still Alex's 8, so he would have to play an 8, 9, or 10. He wants to hold on to this black 10 for later, so he instead chooses to play this 6, 9, converting it to a 9 by spending a fate. David's 9 is now the high play and wins the trick. All of the envoy cards played are then rounded up, stacked, flipped upside down, and placed behind David's reference card. Winning that trick will score him 1 point at the end of the round. The fate that he spent is then returned to the supply. Since David, the yellow player, won the last trick, he will lead this next trick. David chooses to lead a 2-card trick by playing 2 matching cards from his hand. These matching cards do not have to be the same color, so he chooses to play this 7 along with this 3-7 converted to the 7 side by spending a fate. This now means that following players must play 2 cards from their hand, and the current high play is 7 and 7. Next in turn order is Kenner, the red player. Kenner chooses to play high, which means both of his cards must exceed 7. So he'll play this black 6 with the Emperor to increase it to 7. Then he'll also play his other 6 and convert it to a 9 by spending a fate. So his play of 7 and 9 is now the high play. Alex, the blue player, can now play high or low. The high play is currently 7 and 9, so he must play a card that beats both a 7 and then another card that beats a 9. He chooses instead to play low, which means he'll play the 2 lowest black numbers from his hand, which is this 2 and 3. Mark, the black player, must now either play high or low. The high is still 7 and 9, so he decides to play an 8 and a 10, converting the 7 into a 10 by spending 1 fate. Mark now has the high play and wins this trick. The Emperor card, played by Kenner, is returned to its place near the Envoy deck, while all Envoy cards are collected, placed face down in a stack, and put behind Mark's reference card. Even though this is a 2-card trick, it still only scores 1 point at the end of the round. All fate spent is then returned to the supply. Mark, the black player, will lead this trick since he won the previous trick. All players should now be down to 2 cards in their hand, which means the next trick will be the peace treaty. the final trick of the round. This means that Mark cannot lead a 2-card trick because there must always be 1 card left in each player's hand for the peace treaty. So, Mark decides to play this black 5 from his hand. David, the yellow player, can either play high or low. The current high play is a 5, so he'll play this 10 to become the new high play. Kinner, the red player, cannot technically play high since he does not have a 10 to beat the current high play of 10, so he has to play low. He decides to protect his black 3 by playing a red number lower than it from his hand. He does this to save the black 3 in his hand for the peace treaty, since it scores more points than the red 2 would. Alex, the blue player, can also not beat the high play of 10 and must play low. David wins the trick with his high play of 10. All envoy cards are collected, placed face down, and set behind his reference card to score at the end of the round. All fate used is returned to the supply. All players are down to 1 envoy card in their hand, which means this is the peace treaty, the final trick of the round. In the peace treaty, the last player with the highest number loses the trick. There are no high or low restrictions. Since David, the yellow player, won the last trick, he'll play first into the peace treaty, playing this black 2 from his hand. Kinner plays this black 3 from his hand. Alex, the blue player, chooses to spend a fate to convert his card from a 5 to a 4 in hopes that he won't be the highest number. Mark, the black player, unfortunately only has a 4 and must play it. Just like in a standard trick, the player who plays high last is considered the high play, which means that Mark, the black player, is unfortunately now declared the Disgraced House. This means that Mark loses this trick and all other players score points based on the cards they played. In the peace treaty, players score points equal to half of their card's number rounded up, which means that Kinner scores 2 points, Alex scores 2 points, and David scores 1 point. Since Mark lost the peace treaty and became the Disgraced House, he is then given the Emperor card to place in his hand for the next round. After the peace treaty, the end of round scoring begins. Players score 1 point for each trick that they won and add them to the points they scored in the peace treaty. Kinner, the red player, won 0 tricks but gained 2 points from the peace treaty, moving his score to 11. Alex, the blue player, won no tricks but scored 2 points in the peace treaty, moving his score up to 10. Mark, the black player, scores 1 point for the trick that he won and 0 points for the peace treaty, making his score 9. David, the yellow player, scores 2 points for the tricks he won and a single point for the peace treaty, moving his score to 13. David has reached 13 points, triggering the end of the game. No other players have surpassed 13 points, making David the winner. Had David not scored 13 points, the players would reset and start a new round. And that was a full example round of Disgraced House.
Here are the specific changes for each gameplay variant. Crowded Court is for 5 or 6 players. Hand size is not determined by the score track. Instead, in every round, deal each player 6 cards from the top of the envoy deck. During a standard trick, you may bow out if no other player has done so already. To bow out, play your envoy card face down, ignoring high and low restrictions. You cannot win this trick. Alliances is for 2 or 3 teams of 2 players. Teammates must sit across from one another. Use side B of the score track cards and place each team's player tokens together into the horizontal rows. Each player still collects points individually, but the rows help to clearly distinguish each team. At the start of each round, before the first trick, each player chooses one envoy card from their hand and privately gives it to their teammate. At the end of the round, the game ends if both players on a team have each scored 11 or more points. The team whose lower scoring player has the highest score wins. If tied, the team with the highest scoring player wins. Classic Disgraced House offers a more traditional trick-taking experience. Do not use the advisor or ally decks. During setup, do not give players a fate. At the start of every round, give each player 2 fate.
And that's everything you need to know to start playing Disgraced House. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any rules questions, feel free to reach out on social media or on our website, shinypigeongames.com. Have fun and best of luck on claiming the throne.